Working at a university, we're probably considered academics. But what I've learned over the course of my life is that while academics are important, there's a whole lot of other places to do some learning. Now, not always, but sometimes we can learn things from movies, and we already had an example with The Matrix earlier. So I want to take you down the road and begin by talking about a particular movie. It's the story of a woman who desperately wants to become a nun. And so she joins the Benedictine Abbey of Nürnberg. It turns out that she's very young, and she is very rambunctious, high-spirited with a mind of her own. In fact, she's not particularly mature and probably doesn't have the self-discipline to live the life of a nun. As a result, the other nuns kind of gang up on her, and they give her an alternate assignment. They send her to serve as the governess for the 7 children of a widowed war hero in Salzburg, Austria. On her, is this sounding familiar to anybody? Okay. On her way from the abbey to the family estate, and because this is a musical, she breaks out in the following song. She sings, "What will this day be like? I wonder. What will my future be? I wonder." She's already starting to get a little bit worried, isn't she? She goes on, "It should be so exciting to be out in the world, to be free. My heart should be wildly rejoicing. Oh, what's the matter with me?" Now she's really getting worried. "I've always longed for adventure, to do the things I never dared. Now here I'm facing adventure, then why am I so scared?" Why was Maria von Trapp from that beloved movie The Sound of Music scared? What frightened her, other than the thought of maybe me butchering the song some 40 years later? What frightens us? What's this thing called fear? Does it have a real purpose? What's its impact on us today? And what, if anything, can we do to cope with it? So to start us off here, I'd like a little bit of audience participation. What I'm going to ask you to do is to close your eyes. I know, she's talking about fear and wants me to close my eyes. That doesn't sound all that safe, but trust me, you're in safe hands. I want you to think about what I'm about to say. Visualize it. I want you to imagine that you are home alone at night. It's pitch black outside. There is not a star in the sky. The only light in your home is the faint glow from whatever electronic device you happen to be using. Suddenly, without warning, the front screen door opens and slams shut. Without thinking, your heart rate increases. You start breathing faster. Your blood pressure increases. You might start sweating a bit. Your pupils in your eyes dilate, and blood flows like crazy into your arms and legs and shoulders. Got that? Open your eyes. That's fear. Fear is an ancient emotion with the purpose of preparing our bodies to combat danger. It prepares our bodies to do basically one of 2 things: fight or run away. And it's a good thing, right? It's an ancient emotion buried deep within our brain, the oldest part of our brain called the limbic system, and it was meant to keep our ancestors, and in fact all other animals and mammals, alive. Think about it. Think about our hunter-gatherer ancestors. They lived in a pretty rough neighborhood. They didn't live in homes like we live in today. Some of them lived in caves. Some built little lean-tos. And some lived up in the trees. Some just lived wherever. They were out in the open. And you know what? They were not, our ancestors were not the biggest and the baddest creatures in the world. Yes, they were hunters, but they were also hunted. And if we take a moment and think about our good friend Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, who did she talk about being afraid of in the forest? Lions and tigers and bears. Can I get an oh my? Oh my. That wasn't very enthusiastic. Can I get an oh my? Oh my. Yeah, that was real. It was very real. And so this fear mechanism was really important because it helped to ensure as much as possible their survival. It pumped blood away from some parts of the bodies into the parts that we needed to fight. It helped focus our attention. It did everything for us to help prepare, again, to fight something or to run away as quickly as possible. Fear is a good thing until it isn't. See, that part of the brain really was a great help in those days. But today, in the environment in which we live now, maybe not so much. That emotion of fear was created to help prepare our bodies. It wasn't really meant for living in the world we live in today, with more of our fears being psychological. Let me just ask by a show of hands, how many of you live in a tree? And unless you watch Treehouse Masters, you probably don't. How about a cave? Anybody build a little lean-to outside? No. We're pretty safe. We're really very safe. Remember the lions and the tigers and the bears? According to Tom Chester, he's done some research about mountain lions in California. The chances of being killed if you're a hiker in California by a mountain lion, 23 million to 1. According to information from Yellowstone National Park, over a 150-year period, only 5 people have been attacked and killed by a bear. More people have drowned at Yellowstone than have been killed by bears. And I think about what frightens us today. One of the things, because of the media, well, because it happens and because of the media, is terrorism. We get afraid of that. But according to lifeinsurancequotes.com, I found that your chances of being killed in a terrorism attack are 20 million to 1. So we don't really live in a very physically dangerous environment. But that doesn't mean that there's any shortage of fears. I conducted some extensive research known as Googling. And I found a site called phobialist.com where someone had taken the time to catalog and write down 539 different fears and phobias that plague us today. And I thought, since we're in an academic setting, a couple that really struck me. One was called testophobia. You want to guess what that's a fear of? Yeah, taking tests. I don't know about you, I was never afraid of taking them. I was afraid of the results. The other one was called sophophobia. It's the fear of learning. So this ancient mechanism, which was once meant to protect us, now has a much different impact on us. You see, when we become frightened, when we even today have psychological fear, we experience the exact same reaction in our bodies. If you were actually at home that night and that door slammed, those things would have happened to you. Cortisol and adrenaline start pouring through our bodies to get us ready to respond, and that's exactly what happens when we experience psychological fear. Now, fear can be found in many different ways, sometimes kind of innocuous. I like to call people that I've read about and seen on YouTube and things, I like to call them my friends, even though I don't know them. And one of my newest friends over the past year is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Robert Sapolsky. He's a neuroscientist from Stanford University. In part of his career, he took time out every year to go study the baboons in Africa. Why baboons? Because they were most similar in structure, in terms of their social structure, to humans. And here's what he found. And there's more details to this, but generally, here's what he found. Hierarchies can cause fear. We all live in hierarchies. But he found with the baboons, if you were the alpha male at the top of the hierarchy, you would have less fear and less stress coursing through your bodies than the baboon at the very bottom of the hierarchical pyramid. But that's baboons. That's another primate. What about that other primate called us? Well, another study done regarding the British Social Service by Sir Michael Marmont. He studied over a course of 40 years, 28,000 people in this organization, and guess what he found? You know it. He found the exact same thing. Fear and stress in an organization were caused by the hierarchy. So sometimes things that we're not even aware of can cause fear and create that cascade of chemicals in our bodies. And the one I just want to touch on briefly is called cortisol. It certainly has an impact on our bodies to help prepare us for fight or flight, but when we don't fight and we don't flee and we're constantly in chronic sense of fear and anxiety, the effects of cortisol on our body are devastating. It is a, I wouldn't say it's a cause, but it contributes highly to cardiovascular disease, depression, anxiety, insomnia, lack of appetite, and memory loss. So the mechanism in our brain that once was meant to protect us in a much more violent era, now according to researcher in the 1930s, Hans Selye, he talks about the irony. Now that was once meant to protect us as hunters and gatherers is having a devastating effect on our physical and our mental health. President Roosevelt, FDR, spoke the following words. I think you all probably know them. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. When I was first reading about that, probably in high school, studying history, I didn't do all the deep research. I probably didn't really care. But I thought he made that statement in reference to World War II. There was something to fear in World War II. Doing a little bit deeper research, I found that he actually spoke those words at his first inaugural address in 1933, and it was in response not to a war but to the Great Depression. Psychological fear. And he was so right. Being afraid has unbelievably powerful impact on our health. I will tell you, I feel especially qualified to talk about this topic of fear. Because in my 58 years, I've been afraid. I've been afraid more than once. And I will likely be afraid long after today. You might say, well, why are you talking to us about fear? Are you afraid? Right? We can't help it. It's biologically built in to our brains. I'm going to talk a little bit about an experience I had with fear. It was nearly 2 years ago. I was serving as superintendent in a local suburban school district. We had some new administrative staff. I thought it'd be a great idea to do some team building. So we went to Camp Dodge, and we went through this obstacle course. I said, that'd be great, because I did this 25 years ago. We got all the way through the day, pretty successfully. The very last event, well, I'll spare you the gory details, but I didn't stick the landing very well. And upon feeling excruciating pain, I looked down at my leg, and I'm probably one of the few people on the planet who's actually seen his tibia up close and personal. Now, a lot of the chemicals in my body help alleviate some of the pain, but I was scared, because as I looked down, I thought, that's not normal. And as medics were helping me and they needed to take my shoe off, I was afraid that my foot was going to come off in my shoe. I was afraid. I thought I was going to lose that foot. And I want to talk about how I coped with that in just a moment. So we'll get to the question, how do we cope with fear? Well, I would first offer us to consider there's nothing we can do to stop it. It's how we respond to it that's most important. And this is where the battle of the brain comes in. The ancient limbic system is telling us to fear something in order to do something. But we typically don't, because it's a psychological fear. But we have this the newest part of our brain called the neocortex, the prefrontal neocortex. That's where we do a lot of our real cognitive thinking. That's where we can mitigate emotion. So in the battle of the brain, when the limbic system is telling us to be afraid, the first thing we need to do, using this part of our brain, is to exercise some human freedom. In other words, something that happens to us, it happens, and we have a response. But using the prefrontal cortex, we can start asking about that response. We can be self-aware, and we can ask ourselves some questions like, is this a real danger? Do I need to prepare to fight somebody or run away? Or is this more in my brain? And when I come to that realization that perhaps it is not a real danger, what can I do? Well, once I've been self-aware with it, I can use something that probably no other creature has on the earth other than humans. I can use my imagination. I can start to look at that situation rather than being something that's threatening me, and I can say, you know what? That's interesting. And when it becomes interesting rather than frightening, I can probably go into some problem solving and do something about it. So this battle occurs within our brain. It takes an enormous amount of effort and energy to engage that front part of our brain to combat the limbic system. But I want to leave you with this idea. If we consider, according to research that's been done in the American Heart Association, that over 50% of the population, at least in our country, will suffer some kind of cardiovascular disease. And of all the deaths that occur, 1 out of every 4 is related to the cardiac system. And if we also think about stress being a major contributor to cardiovascular disease, it's incumbent upon us, in order to transform our lives, to take fear by the horns and use this part of our brain and think about a better solution rather than fighting and running. Thank you.